The city of Tarion Prime never slept. Neon lights painted the sky, ships floated between towers, and aliens from 100 worlds filled the streets. But in that crowd, one man looked out of place, a tired human father holding a small baby wrapped in a worn gray blanket. His clothes were old, his boots scratched, and his eyes carried the weight of sleepless nights. In his hand he held a single shining coin, his last coin. His baby, barely a year old, whimpered softly. The father stopped under a glowing sign that read, "Star Mart, open all orbits." Inside, the air smelled of metal and sweet alien spices. Shelves were lined with products written in alien script, and behind the counter stood a tall, four-armed clerk with silver skin. The father took a deep breath and walked in. "Excuse me," he said softly. "How much for a small pack of diapers?" The alien clerk glanced at him and frowned. "Diapers? You're in the wrong place, human. Go to the lower levels." But the man didn't move. He looked down at his baby's small face, then at the single coin in his hand. "Please, I just need one pack." The clerk laughed, a cold, sharp sound. "That coin won't even buy a drop of cleaning fluid." The aliens nearby joined in the laughter. One of them, wearing rich glowing robes, muttered, "Humans, always begging." The father's cheeks burned, but he didn't argue. He placed the coin gently on the counter and said, "Then keep it. Maybe one day it will mean something." For a moment, the laughter stopped. The alien clerk stared at him, confused. "You're giving it away?" He nodded. "It's all I have, and I want to spend it with dignity." He turned to leave, but a voice from the corner spoke quietly, soft but filled with authority. "Wait." Everyone froze. From the upper floor, a woman descended slowly, surrounded by guards. Her robe shimmered like liquid gold, and a crown of crystal rested on her dark blue hair. It was the alien Empress herself, the ruler of the Empire. The crowd bowed instantly. Even the laughing aliens dropped to their knees. The human father didn't understand what was happening. He only held his baby tighter. The Empress's glowing eyes studied him carefully. "A human," she said, her voice smooth but cold. "Why give away your last coin?" He looked up at her. "Because my child needs clean diapers more than I need pride." The words hung in the air like fire. Even her guard shifted uncomfortably. The Empress took a step forward. "And you think dignity feeds your baby?" "No," he said quietly, "but it feeds her father's soul." For a moment, silence filled the shop. Then the Empress did something no one expected. She laughed. It wasn't mockery, but a strange, almost forgotten sound. The guards looked shocked. "You are a strange creature, human," she said. "Most beings would beg. You choose pride." He simply nodded. "I don't have much left, but I still have that." She turned to the clerk. "Give him what he came for." The alien clerk stammered, "Your Majesty, the store—" Her voice cut like ice. "Do it and charge it to the royal treasury." The crowd gasped. The clerk rushed to pack the best diapers they had, soft, white, and sealed with gold wrap. The father tried to refuse. "I can't take this." "You can," she said, "and you will." She extended her hand, a small shimmering credit chip resting on her palm. "Take it, feed your child." He hesitated. "Why would you help me?" Her gaze softened just a little. "Because once, long ago, I watched my own father spend his last coin for me. I forgot what that looked like. Until now." The father didn't know what to say. He took the pack with shaking hands. "Thank you," he whispered. The Empress turned and began to leave, her golden robe trailing behind her. "Thank your child," she said without looking back. She reminded me that not all wealth shines. The doors slid shut behind her. The store fell silent. Everyone looked at the human man holding his baby and the royal pack of diapers. He walked out quietly into the night rain, his child asleep against his chest. Above him, thunder rolled and the city lights reflected on the wet streets. The single coin he had left behind on the counter gleamed faintly in the alien clerk's hand. The clerk stared at it for a long time, feeling something he hadn't felt in years: respect. Far away in her palace, the Empress stood by her window watching the rain. For the first time in a long time, she smiled and whispered to herself, "Humans, such strange, stubborn creatures." And in that moment, the fate of two worlds quietly began to change. That night, the neon storms of Tarion Prime flickered across the endless skyline. The rain turned the city into a river of light, but inside her silent palace, the alien Empress could not rest. The memory of the human father, that worn, tired man with his fragile baby, stayed in her mind like an echo she could not silence. She sat beside the massive glass wall that overlooked the Capitol, her reflection mixing with the lightning. For the first time in many years, she felt something she couldn't name. Her advisors had already filed reports. The human was identified as Eli Ward, resident of Zone 12, said her aide, a thin alien with glowing red veins. A low-class engineer, no criminal record. Unemployed for 6 moons. The infant, female, name not registered. The Empress listened without expression. And the mother? Deceased. Human sickness, uncurable by our medicine, the aide said softly. For a long time, the Empress said nothing. Then she rose from her seat and walked to the balcony. Her golden robe shimmered under the stormlight. Below, ships floated through the rain like silver fish. Do you think pride is weakness? She asked suddenly. The aide blinked. Weakness, Majesty, I suppose for humans, perhaps. She turned slowly, her eyes glowing faintly. You suppose wrong. No one dared reply. Across the city, Eli Ward sat inside his small one-room apartment. The walls were cracked and the heater barely worked. His baby lay in his arms, sleeping peacefully, wrapped in the soft golden diapers the Empress had given him. He still couldn't believe it had happened. The richest being in the empire, the woman who commanded 1,000 worlds, had bought diapers for his child. He looked at the shining package beside him. It could feed them for months if he sold it. But he didn't. Some things, he whispered to himself, aren't for sale. Outside, thunder rolled again. He rocked the baby gently, staring at the small window where the neon rain painted his reflection. You're going to grow up strong, he murmured. Not rich, maybe, but strong. In the palace, the Empress gave a quiet order. Follow him, she said to her guard captain. I want to know where he goes, how he lives. But do not interfere. Her guards were trained to obey without question, yet even they seemed surprised. Yes, Your Majesty. And so, for the next few nights, the royal surveillance drones shadowed the human. They saw him walking miles each day, searching for work in machine yards that refused to hire humans. They saw him share his last bit of food with his daughter. They saw him fix a broken pipe for an alien neighbor who paid him only in gratitude. When the recordings were played in the royal chamber, the Empress watched every second. She leaned forward as he handed his child a small piece of bread and smiled when she giggled. He laughs, she whispered, even with nothing. Her court ministers were uneasy. Majesty, why concern yourself with one human? There are millions of them, poor, hungry, and insignificant. You can't save them all. She looked at him, eyes like burning suns. I am not trying to save him, she said softly. I am trying to remember myself. The chamber fell silent. Later that night, she dismissed everyone and stood alone by the massive window again. She remembered her own father, how he once worked among the miners before becoming emperor. He too had believed that dignity mattered more than wealth, but centuries of rule had turned her heart into stone. She had forgotten that lesson. Now a single human had reminded her. She turned and whispered to her AI assistant, prepare a royal transport. Tomorrow morning I'll visit the lower city. The AI paused. Majesty, it is not safe. The lower levels are filled with disease and unrest. I said prepare it, she repeated calmly. When dawn came, the Empress's ship descended silently into the fog. No news channel knew. No guards announced her arrival. She wore a plain black cloak instead of royal robes. The air was cold and smelled of dust and oil. She walked through narrow alleys, past shanties built from scrap metal, until she saw him again, Eli Ward, standing near a broken food dispenser, trying to fix it so others could eat. His baby sat in a carrier beside him, laughing as a small stray alien creature hopped around. The Empress stopped in the shadows, her eyes locked on the human. He didn't notice her. He was too busy tightening a pipe and muttering, Come on, old thing, you can work one more day. When the machine finally beeped and released food packets, the crowd around him cheered. Eli smiled tiredly and said, Share it. Everyone gets one. The Empress's heart clenched. She could feel the faint pulse of something she had buried centuries ago. Empathy. She turned to her guard. Do you see it? She whispered. See what, Majesty? The reason humans never give up. She looked once more at the man who had refused to beg, the father who carried honor like armor. Then she said quietly, Tomorrow. Invite him to the palace. The guard hesitated. Majesty, what should I tell him? The Empress's eyes softened, and her voice became almost human. Tell him, she said, that I owe him a debt. And with that she turned away, leaving the alley bathed in soft golden light as her ship rose silently into the storm. That night the human father slept peacefully for the first time in weeks, unaware that his life and his child's future was about to change forever. Morning came slowly to the lower levels of Tarion Prime. The city's upper towers glowed with light, but here below the air smelled of rust and smoke. Eli Ward, the human father, woke to the soft sound of his baby breathing beside him. She was wrapped in her little blanket, her small hand resting against his chest. For the first time in weeks, she looked peaceful. He smiled faintly, brushing her hair. "Morning, my little star," he whispered. "Let's see what the universe has for us today." But when he opened the door, the universe was already waiting. Two massive guards stood outside, tall aliens with dark armor and glowing eyes. Their presence filled the narrow hallway like a shadow. Every neighbor froze, peeking from behind broken doors. One whispered, "Royal Guards, here?" Another muttered, "They've come for the human." Eli's heart pounded. I didn't do anything wrong," he said, holding his baby tighter. One of the guards bowed slightly, his metallic voice echoing. "Citizen Eli Ward, by order of Her Imperial Majesty the Empress of Tarion, you are to accompany us immediately." Eli's mouth went dry. "The Empress?" "Yes," the guard replied. "You are not under arrest. You are requested." "Requested? By the Empress herself?" It made no sense. But he looked down at his baby, then back at the guards. He had no choice. "Let me get her things," he said quietly. The guards waited as he wrapped his child close and stepped out into the street. The moment he did, the entire block fell silent. People stared. A poor human father walking between royal guards. It was something no one had ever seen. A hovercar waited at the end of the road, sleek and black with golden insignia. Eli hesitated before stepping in, his arms tight around his baby. As the car lifted into the mist, the city fell away beneath them. Eli looked out the window at the endless towers and glowing sky lanes. "What's happening?" he asked softly. "Why me?" Neither guard answered. The journey felt like a dream, or maybe a warning. He thought about running, but where could he go? The baby stirred and cried softly, and he whispered, "It's okay, sweetheart. Daddy's here." Then the car broke through the clouds, and there it was. The Imperial Palace, floating above the city like a mountain of gold, wrapped in rings of blue light and guarded by starships that glowed like suns. It was the home of the most powerful being in the galaxy, and he, a broke human father, was flying straight toward it. The hovercar landed silently on a glass platform. Guards in silver armor saluted. A tall alien woman in royal robes approached him. Lady Vera, the Empress's personal attendant. Her tone was calm but sharp. "You are Eli Ward?" He nodded, trying not to look afraid. "Yes, ma'am. Follow me, and do not be alarmed. Her Majesty wishes to speak to you directly." Eli's legs felt heavy as he walked through halls made of crystal and gold. Every step echoed. Massive portraits of alien rulers stared down at him, and he felt small, smaller than ever before. His baby clung to his shirt, sensing his unease. They reached two giant doors engraved with ancient runes. Lady Vera stopped and said, "You will bow when you enter. Speak only when addressed. The Empress values honesty, but not arrogance." Eli swallowed hard. "I understand." The doors opened. The throne room was vast and glowing. At its center sat the alien Empress, radiant and motionless, her golden robe flowing around her like fire. Her eyes met his the moment he stepped inside. For a moment she said nothing. Then softly, "You came." Eli bowed low. "Your Majesty," he said quietly. She studied him. The tired lines on his face, the small child in his arms, the way he held her protectively. "That is your daughter?" "Yes," he said. "Her name is Hope." "Hope?" the Empress repeated, almost to herself. A fitting name for a species that refuses to die. He frowned slightly. "May I ask, why am I here?" Her gaze softened, though her tone stayed royal. "Because you reminded me of something I forgot long ago." She stood and walked closer, her presence like heat. "You did not beg even when you had nothing. You gave your last coin with pride. Tell me, Eli Ward, why?" He shifted, holding his daughter close. "Because begging teaches her fear, and I want her to grow strong, not ashamed." The Empress was silent for a moment, her eyes unreadable. Then she spoke again, her voice gentler. "You have courage rare among species richer than yours. She turned slightly to her attendant. "Bring the gift." A small chest was carried forward, black crystal shimmering faintly. When it opened, Eli saw a credit token worth more than 1,000 years of his wages. He stepped back instantly. I can't take that, Your Majesty." Her lips curved faintly. "You can, and you will. It is not a gift of charity. It is a recognition of worth." He shook his head. "My worth isn't measured in money." For a moment, the Empress just stared. Then she smiled, a real human smile. "Then take it for your daughter's future. She deserves a world where strength like yours is not punished by poverty." He hesitated, torn between pride and desperation. His baby coughed softly, the sound sharp in the quiet hall. His heart broke. He slowly reached out and took the token, not for himself, but for her. The Empress nodded. "Good," she said softly. "Now one more thing." He looked up. "Yes, Majesty?" She turned toward her throne. "You will work here in the palace. As an engineer. Your hands will not beg, they will build." Eli froze. "Work here?" "Yes," she said simply. "Let your child grow under my protection. You have earned that much." Eli's throat tightened. He bowed deeply. "Thank you, Your Majesty." The Empress looked at him, her eyes softer than ever before. "Do not thank me, human. Thank the part of me your courage woke up." And as he left the throne room, still trembling, he didn't realize that outside, across the Empire, millions were already whispering the news. The alien Empress had invited a poor human into her palace. The galaxy was about to change, and it all began with one last coin. The Imperial Palace was not built for humans. Every corridor stretched too tall. Every ceiling glittered like the inside of a star. Even the air smelled different, sweet, metallic, and alive with alien energy. Eli Ward, the human father, walked through it carefully, holding his baby close. His boots echoed against marble floors, and every alien servant that passed him stared. Some looked curious, others disgusted, but he didn't care. His baby, Hope, slept peacefully against his chest, unaware that her father was walking through the heart of the galaxy's greatest empire. 2 guards led him into a vast chamber of golden glass. A single figure waited at the far end, tall, graceful, and silent. The alien Empress. When she turned, the light shimmered off her robe like molten sunlight. Her eyes, bright as twin blue stars, studied him carefully. She raised her hand slightly, and the guards stopped several meters away. "Leave us," she commanded. The guards bowed and exited quietly, leaving only the Empress, Eli, and the soft breathing of a sleeping baby. Eli felt a lump in his throat. "Your Majesty," he began, but his voice came out low and rough. The Empress approached him slowly. "So," she said softly, "this is the man who made the galaxy speak." He blinked. "The galaxy?" Her lips curved faintly. "Your story has spread across every news feed. The proud human who spent his last coin for his child. The Empress who bought his diapers. You've become a symbol." Eli frowned. "A symbol? I didn't ask for that." "I know," she said, stopping a few steps away. "That is what makes it powerful." He stood silently, unsure what to say. The Empress gestured toward a small silver chair. "Sit. You are my guest, not my servant." Eli sat carefully, still holding Hope. The Empress studied the child. "She looks healthy," she said. "She's better now," Eli replied. "Because of your help." The Empress shook her head. "Because of your strength." She paused, then asked quietly, "Tell me, Eli Ward, what do humans dream of?" He was surprised by the question. "Dream?" "Yes," she said. "Your people came from a small, dying planet. Yet you spread across the stars, building colonies with bare hands and broken ships. I've ruled empires, but I don't understand what keeps your kind moving forward." Eli thought for a moment. "It's simple, Majesty. We dream because we have to. When the universe says no, humans make it a maybe." The Empress's eyes glimmered like she was studying a puzzle. "And yet you live in poverty. Most species would surrender under such hardship." He smiled faintly. "Maybe. But surrender is something humans were never good at." The silence that followed felt heavy but not cold. The Empress finally said, "You are either a fool or something rarer." "Maybe both," he said quietly. A small sound broke the tension. Hope began to cry. Eli instantly rocked her, whispering gently, "Shh, it's okay, sweetheart. Daddy's here." The Empress watched, frozen. The way he looked at his child, like the world stopped for her, touched something deep inside her, something she thought she had lost centuries ago. Without a word, she knelt beside them. Her golden robe spread across the floor like liquid. "May I?" she asked softly, reaching out. Eli hesitated, then nodded. The Empress carefully touched the baby's tiny hand. Hope blinked, looked up at the glowing woman before her, and giggled. The Empress actually smiled, a small, honest smile. "She is not afraid," she said. "She doesn't know what fear is yet," Eli replied. "That's my job, to keep it away as long as I can." The Empress looked at him for a long time, her voice quiet when she spoke again. "Tell me, human father, what would you do if you had everything you ever needed? Food, home, wealth." Eli didn't hesitate. "I'd make sure others didn't go hungry." Her eyes widened slightly. "Even after how they treated you?" He nodded. "That's exactly why." For a moment, the throne room felt smaller, warmer. The Empress stood again, but her tone had changed. It wasn't cold anymore. "You have reminded me of something my father once said," she whispered. "That the strongest hands are not the ones that strike, but the ones that hold." She walked back to her throne, her robe flowing behind her. "Eli Ward, I have ruled for centuries with logic and fear, but perhaps it is time I ruled with something else." Eli stood, still holding hope. "Majesty, I'm just a man trying to survive. I don't know anything about ruling." "You know how to be human," she said simply. "And that is something my people have forgotten." She turned to the guards at the door. "Prepare quarters for him and his child within the palace. He will stay here." Eli's eyes widened. "Here in the palace?" "Yes," she said. "As my guest and perhaps as my reminder." He hesitated, unsure if it was honor or danger. But when he looked at his baby, warm and smiling in his arms, he felt hope rise again. "Thank you, Your Majesty," he said softly. The Empress gave a small nod. "Rest, human. Tomorrow we talk not as ruler and subject, but as two beings who still believe in love." As he was escorted out, the Empress watched them go. She felt something stir deep within her chest, a heartbeat she hadn't felt in years. And as the door closed, she whispered to herself, "Strange creatures, humans. They change the world without even trying." Outside, thunder rolled across the alien sky, marking the beginning of something neither of them could yet understand. A bond that would shake the empire itself. The next morning, soft golden light slipped through the palace windows. Eli Ward woke to silence, something he hadn't known for years. The air was warm, the bed soft, and for the first time little Hope wasn't crying. She lay beside him, blinking at the strange beauty of the room. Walls shimmering with blue light, floating gardens outside, and the hum of energy veins running under the marble floor. Eli sat up slowly. His old instincts told him to be ready to leave, but a knock came before he could even stand. The door opened and a tall alien woman with silver hair stepped inside. She bowed slightly. "Good morning, Citizen Ward," she said. "Her Majesty requests your presence at the Grand Hall." Eli's heart jumped. "The Empress again?" "Yes," the attendant said with a faint smile. "And she insists you bring the child." Minutes later, Eli stood before the Empress once more. The hall was quiet, lit by sunlight that poured through stained glass walls. The alien Empress stood beside a long table covered in strange metallic scrolls and holographic maps. She looked less like a ruler today and more like a woman lost in deep thought. When she turned to face him, her voice was gentle. "You slept well?" Eli nodded. "Yes, Your Majesty. Better than I have in months." "Good," she said. "You will need strength for what comes next." He frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" Instead of answering, she raised her hand. A servant stepped forward carrying a small black case that pulsed with golden light. The Empress opened it slowly. Inside lay a glowing emblem, a royal insignia made of crystal and metal, shaped like two wings wrapping around a star. "This," she said softly, "is a royal bond sigil. It is given only to those who have earned the Empire's highest respect." Eli stepped back instinctively. "I can't take that, Your Majesty." She looked at him sharply. "You refuse again?" "I'm not a hero," he said quietly. "I'm just a man trying to raise his child." "That is precisely why you deserve it," she replied. Her tone softened again. "Do you know how many in my court would sell their honor for such a thing? Yet you who have nothing refuse even gifts. That is why I trust you." Eli looked down at his daughter. "Trust me? For what?" The Empress stepped closer, her eyes glimmering like twin suns. To help rebuild what has been lost. He blinked. Majesty, I don't understand. You will, she said. The Empire has grown cold. We forgot what it means to care for one another. You reminded me that strength is not measured by wealth or armies, but by how fiercely one protects what they love. Eli didn't know what to say. The Empress turned and pressed the sigil into his hands. It was warm, alive almost. From this day forward, she said, you and your child are under my personal protection. No one will mock you again. No one will starve you again. His throat tightened. I don't know how to thank you. Don't thank me, she said. Prove me right. Keep being human. As he left the hall, whispers spread like wind through the palace corridors. Servants stared, nobles frowned. The Empress gave him a royal sigil? One murmured. To a human? In the high council chambers, powerful voices began to rise. Alien nobles, their robes heavy with gold, spoke in anger. She's losing her mind, hissed one. To honor a dirt-born human? It's madness, another said. Her sympathy will destroy the old order. The lower races will think they are equal to us. But the Empress heard their words through the palace comms. She stood silently by her window, watching the rain fall over Tarian Prime. Her reflection looked different, less like a queen, more like a person rediscovering her soul. That evening, she visited the nursery wing where Eli and Hope rested. No guards, no advisors, just her. The baby giggled when she entered as if she recognized the Empress instantly. Eli stood, startled. Your Majesty. I didn't expect— Relax, she said softly, sitting beside them. She looked down at Hope and smiled faintly. She reminds me of myself. Before the crown. Eli chuckled. I doubt that. The Empress tilted her head. You'd be surprised. I too had a father who spent his last coin to feed me. Before the throne, I knew hunger. Her voice softened. When I saw you that day in the market, I remembered him. That is why I helped you. Eli looked at her with quiet respect. Then maybe we're not so different, Majesty. She turned her gaze toward the stars visible through the glass ceiling. Perhaps not. But remember this, Eli Ward, compassion is not weakness. It is what keeps empires alive. Hope yawned and reached for the Empress's hand. The alien ruler hesitated, then let the tiny fingers wrap around her own. For the first time in centuries, someone touched her without fear, and as she sat there, the Empress realized something astonishing. She, the most powerful being in the galaxy, had just been healed by a human child. Outside, lightning flashed again over the city, but this time it didn't sound like thunder. It sounded like change. The galaxy did not stay quiet for long. By the time dawn reached the high towers of Tarion Prime, every major channel in the Empire was already broadcasting the same unbelievable news. The alien Empress had given a royal sigil to a human. On hundreds of planets, nobles shouted in outrage. Some demanded her removal. Others called it a scandal. The word human, once used as an insult, was now being spoken with both anger and curiosity. And through it all, the Empress remained silent. But silence was not safety. Inside the palace, tension thickened like storm clouds. Eli Ward could feel it. Everywhere he went, alien nobles whispered behind his back. Their cold eyes followed him and his daughter Hope as if he carried a disease. He didn't understand their words, but he understood the tone. Unwelcome. One evening, as he was repairing a damaged energy conduit in the palace's lower deck, a group of armored guards appeared. Not the Empress's personal guards. These wore crimson armor, the mark of the High Council's protection force. Their leader, a tall alien with a long scar across his cheek, stepped forward. Human, he said flatly. You are not supposed to be here. Eli looked up calmly from his work. Her Majesty assigned me to fix this line, the alien sneered. Her Majesty makes mistakes. You are one of them. Before Eli could reply, the guard kicked the toolbox aside. You think because she smiled at you, you're one of us? He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You're nothing but a story, a passing fancy. When the council removes her, you and your little creature will be gone too. Eli froze. His jaw tightened, but he didn't answer. He only stood up, towering slightly over the alien, his eyes steady. If you're done talking, he said quietly, I'll finish my job. The alien blinked. For a second, he looked ready to strike, but something in Eli's expression stopped him. He turned sharply and walked away, muttering, Enjoy your days, human. They're numbered. That night, the palace trembled with unrest. The High Council met behind closed doors. Dozens of alien senators and military leaders gathered, their voices rising in anger. "She risks everything for one human," shouted a noble. "The outer colonies already question her rule." "She defies tradition," another snarled. "No empress has ever lowered herself to mingle with dirtborns." The chamber erupted in noise until one old alien, a former general, spoke softly but with deadly calm. "Then it is time to remind her who truly controls the empire." In her private chambers, the Empress stood by the vast window overlooking the city. Rain fell again, Tarion's endless silver rain. Her reflection looked tired, her golden robe heavy on her shoulders. When her aide, Lady Vera, entered, she didn't need to speak to know something was wrong. "Majesty," she said carefully, "there are movements within the council. They're calling for a vote of limitation on your powers." The Empress didn't flinch. "Let them call." "Majesty." She turned, her eyes glowing faintly. "They call me weak because I showed compassion. They think love is a threat." Vera hesitated. "To them it is, because it spreads faster than fear." The Empress smiled sadly. "Then let it spread." Eli didn't know any of this. All he knew was that the palace felt colder now. Fewer servants spoke to him, and even the guards avoided his gaze. He tried to stay busy, fixing machines, keeping Hope fed and safe. But one night, as he carried her back from the garden, a small explosion echoed in the distance. The floor shook, alarms wailed. He ducked, holding Hope close. What was that? Moments later, soldiers rushed through the corridors. One stopped near him. "Saboteurs. Someone tried to breach the energy core." Eli's blood ran cold. "Is the Empress safe?" The soldier hesitated, then nodded quickly. "She's in the command hall, but they're saying humans were involved." "What?" Eli's voice cracked. "That's a lie." The soldier looked uncomfortable. "Rumors travel fast, sir. You should stay hidden." Eli clutched his daughter tighter. He knew this was no accident. It was an attempt to turn the people against him, against humans, against her. Hours later, the Empress addressed the Empire. Her image was broadcast across every planet. She stood tall, eyes burning with quiet fury. "My people," she began, her voice calm but cutting through the noise. "You call me weak for showing mercy. You call me foolish for seeing worth in a human. But I tell you this, it is not weakness to care, it is strength to see beyond species." The crowd murmured. Across the galaxies, beings watched in stunned silence. She continued, "If my kindness makes me unfit to rule, then I will step down. But before you judge, ask yourselves, what future do we build when we crush compassion beneath power?" Eli watched the broadcast from his quarters, his heart racing. Hope giggled, reaching toward the hologram of the Empress's face. He smiled softly. "She's not just fighting for herself anymore, little one," he whispered. "She's fighting for us." Outside, the city thundered with debate. Protests filled the air, some for her, some against. But for the first time in centuries, something greater than fear began to move through the empire, the spark of humanity, and it burned brighter with every heartbeat. The days after the Empress's speech changed everything. The empire that had once bowed in silence was now alive with noise, arguments, debates, and questions that had never been asked before. Some planets cheered for her, calling her the Golden Heart, while others rioted, demanding her removal. The old order trembled, not because of war, but because of something far more dangerous: hope. In the royal palace, life felt like walking a line between peace and chaos. Eli Ward moved through the marble halls with his baby girl, Hope, who now laughed freely, unafraid. Servants who once looked away now smiled shyly. Some even whispered, "That's the human who changed the Empress." But Eli didn't feel powerful. He felt nervous. The tension in the air was thick, like before a storm. Every time a door opened behind him, he turned, half expecting soldiers. That morning, Lady Vera appeared again. Her silver eyes carried worry. "Eli," she said softly, dropping the royal formality. "The council has voted. They're sending ships. They want to arrest Her Majesty." Eli's blood turned cold. "Arrest her? For what?" "For compassion," she said bitterly. "They call it weakness. They plan to seize control before her message spreads any further." Eli stood frozen. Hope stirred in his arms, making a soft sound. He looked down at her and whispered, "Not again. No one takes her kindness away." The palace skies darkened as the council's fleet approached, black ships cutting through the clouds like blades. Inside the throne hall, the Empress stood tall, her golden robe rippling like fire. Around her, loyal guards prepared for what might come next. When Eli entered, she turned to him with a calm smile. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly. "I'm not leaving," he answered. She looked down at the baby in his arms. "Then your daughter will see how an empire stands. Or how it falls." He stepped closer. "Majesty, let me help. You gave me a life. Let me give something back." The Empress studied him for a moment. "You already have. You reminded me who I am." Outside, thunder rumbled, not weather but engines. The fleet had arrived. The palace shields flared with blue light as ships surrounded them. From the lead vessel, a voice boomed over the comms. "Empress Lysera of Tarion Prime, you are ordered to surrender power immediately. Your rule is ended." The Empress lifted her chin. "Tell them," she said, "the throne does not fear shadows." A pause. Then the voice returned, "So be it." And the attack began. Explosions tore through the outer towers. The palace shook, sending shards of glass raining from the ceiling. Guards rushed to defend the gates. Eli shielded Hope with his body as debris fell around them. "Majesty," Lady Vera shouted. "They've breached the Western Hall." The Empress stood at the center of the chaos, calm as ever. "Evacuate the lower floors." "Protect the civilians," Eli turned to her. "You need to get to safety." She looked at him, her blue eyes glowing fiercely. "No, Eli, if I run, they win." He swallowed hard. "Then I'm staying." She smiled faintly. "I knew you'd say that." Together they moved through the smoke-filled corridors, helping wounded soldiers and carrying children to safety. Eli's hands were burned, his shirt torn, but he kept going. Every scream, every explosion only made him move faster. At one point they reached the throne room again, half destroyed, fire licking at the walls. A large window had shattered, giving a view of the burning city below. The Empress looked out, sadness in her eyes. "I wanted to give them peace," she whispered. Eli stepped beside her, hope cradled against his chest. "You did. You showed them what real power looks like." She turned to him slowly. "And what's that, human?" He met her gaze. "The power to care when everyone else stops." Something broke in her then, not pain but pride. She reached into her robe and pulled out a small golden crest. "Take this," she said. "When they remember today, they'll remember you too." He shook his head. "No, Majesty," she pressed it into his palm. "You once told me dignity feeds the soul. Let this feed theirs." Moments later, the heavy blast doors burst open. Council soldiers stormed in, weapons drawn, but they froze. The Empress stood before them, hands raised, unarmed, a glowing child in the human's arms behind her. "Look well," she said. "This is what you fear. A baby, a father, and an idea you cannot kill." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then one by one, the soldiers lowered their weapons. The rebellion died not with blood, but with silence. Weeks later, peace returned. The Empress remained on her throne, but her empire was no longer the same. Across the stars, new laws were made. Humans granted equal rights, old hierarchies broken. The tale of the broke father and the Golden Empress became legend. Eli now worked as the chief engineer of the Imperial fleet. Hope grew up within palace walls, calling the Empress her star mother, and the Empress, though surrounded by power, never forgot the day a human taught her to be humble. Sometimes late at night she would walk alone to the balcony where rain still fell, and in the distance she would see a small figure, a man carrying a laughing child through the gardens. And she would whisper to herself, smiling softly, "Empires rise from war, but they endure through love." Above Tarion Prime, the storm clouds parted, and for the first time in centuries, the sky shone clear, reflecting the light of a new legacy born from a single shining coin.